now 5:06, and we'll call this Water and Sewer Committee meeting to order. Real quick to get folks' minds back into the Water Sewer Committee game. We last met on September 18th of last year with 4 items that were in front of us. We recommended appropriation of $217,000 out of the sewer fund for phase 2 work for the long-term control plan. We recommended allocation of $301,614 to cover access and maintenance costs inside the city limits for the Howard Run ditch maintenance funding. And we asked for the extending sanitary sewers to properties within city limits that are on septic systems, where we were looking to send mail to identify property owners. And lastly, we once again talked about our policies and procedures for instituting utility billing rate changes, which have been a continued meeting for many times, obviously. And we had recommended to clean up language in the water rate review process document and incorporate it into the water rules and the sewer rules. So since that time, I've worked with Rob and Jason to affect the changes that we made to the water rules. And I think I shared a copy of that with the Water and Sewer Committee with the recommended changes, and then worked with Rob to incorporate that into the water rules. And then we took that same document and we tweaked it to fit the sewer rules, and then went through a process of cleaning up the sewer rules by incorporating that information into the sewer rules, and also cleaning up some errant language that we happen to see in the sewer rules. And I think other changes were made. And so to start this, we're going to discuss, I believe it's the water first changes. And to the committee, I sent that document out. Did anybody see anything that was glaringly out of place? I mean, it was the same things with 1 or 2 word changes, I think. So if there's not, then Rob, I'm going to toss it to you to describe how that got into the water rules. With our goal, Water and Sewer Committee, is to make a recommendation to the full council to accept the updated water rules that incorporate this rate change process.
So, building off of what Councilman Russell said, is we worked through this from our rate change a couple years ago, working through the modeling. We wanted to establish language in the water rules to actually mirror what our process was, so it was clear in the future, regardless if we were doing this on an annual basis or 10 years down the road, as we found ourselves here 2 years ago. So understanding what the ORC says, understanding our process, making sure that we're sharing the information that we are constantly looking at with the data analysis and the money in, expenses, et cetera, capital, operating. We created this language that basically says, and I'll summarize it without reading it for line by line, is the 3rd quarter of each year, the administration is going to present to the Water and Sewer Committee a pro forma, not only including what our current status of the health of the fund is, but what our recommendations are based on operating capital, what we anticipate, what our current state is, what we anticipate the needs are in the future, and present a recommendation to the Water and Sewer Committee on if there is a rate change and what that would look like. Or, hey, we're in good shape for the next 2 to 3 to 4 years, whatever that looks like. We don't recommend any change. And then we debate that and have that conversation and explain the why behind it to the Water and Sewer Committee. And if there's recommendations to, hey, tweak it, or we don't agree with you, we can continue to work through that. But at the end of the day, when that Water and Sewer Committee and administration have that discussion in the 3rd quarter and explain what that looks like, then that recommendation that administration brings, whatever it is, would then be either supported, endorsed, or not endorsed by the water and sewer, and those meeting minutes would then go to council. Ultimately, though, as we understand, the ORC still gives the service safety director the authority to make that change. That's not how we have been doing things. We have been doing things by committee and working through this, taking the knowledge and the expertise of everyone involved. But that is how it's established. That's what the language says. And that's how it's laid out in the water rules. Now, do you want me to stop there?
For the water, just simply the water rules and the inclusions for the, sort of any questions or concerns about how this got included? And like how it was added, I should say, and where and all that kind of stuff.
It just without reading it, but for the people listening at home, the pro forma actually has bulletized things.
No, I'm talking about where the policy paragraphs fit into the water rules.
Yes.
And do we have any concerns with this, or do we have something that we think is now in the format that we can recommend to full council?
I'm good with it as is.
Yeah.
Me too.
Okay. Yep. And then was there any other drastic changes to the water rules?
There was some clerical things with like index numbering, but it is, the language itself, the wording itself is staying as is. There was one, the first page you have, page 8 or 10, I'm sorry, which is number 8. We changed the word transmitter process to reconciliation process. But the language and the behind what is actually happening in line by who did not change.
Okay, so let's go to the wastewater document. So that would be page 16 of that next set.
So the second set of documents you were given, again, as Councilman Russell pointed out, we went back and we recognized that there were some ORC was cited improperly a couple spots. We cleaned that up. But you go to what the intent was behind looking at the sewer rules was we wanted to make sure that in this process for water, it looks like it's a good process. It's standardized. And we have this in order. Let's do this for all of our funds. So we can look at this so on a yearly basis. So if we have to make changes, we can be ahead of it. We're looking at this already. So let's just put it out there and have it in a committee format so it's out there so the community can see what we're doing and how we're doing it. So what we did is we essentially added the same language to the sewer. The only change is that by the ORC, the legislative body has the authority to make the changes to sewer rates. So with that, the language is the same. We're going to come in Q3. The administration is going to bring a recommendation based on the fund stability, the health of it, based on operations, capital, et cetera, what the capital plans are looking at as we look out, and where we need to be with our fund health, and the recommendation will be presented to the Water and Sewer Committee. We debate that. We go through the minutia of that process. Recommendation would come out of Water and Sewer. And then that would actually go to, if there is a change recommended, then it would actually go to the law director to create legislation to then go to the full council and then go through the legislative process, debate, vote, move forward, however.
So in essence, the process for the two are the same, except for the last step. The water fund, Rob makes the change. The sewer, for water rates, Rob makes a change. For sewer rates, we do it through legislation. But it still starts with administration and water sewer in Q3. Water and sewer makes a recommendation on this to the full council for consideration. Full council, in the case of sewer, full council would have to pass it. So it would behoove the administration to bring a piece of legislation that the full council supported, but it all starts in that Q3 pro forma review with water and sewer. And then the actual changes in the document on page 16, there's two highlights, and I will mention that there's in that first highlight, it should say by water meter, because when you look at our sewer rates, we charge based on the water meter size. And then the second one really just spells out the different ORC and the slightly different process. It says, hey, it's we're gonna create legislation for the change. So other than that, it's the water process, obviously, where we say where we said water before, we'll say wastewater now. I don't know if it's wastewater or sewer, we seem to use these terms interchangeably. But and when we say wastewater, we're also considering storm. That's just that isn't applied. So that once again is the process. So to the committee, I know you're seeing this for the first time. Is there any wordsmithing that is worthwhile or on the process? And are you okay with how this reads out at the process? What we talked about, this is just, now we're seeing it on paper. Really, you guys have probably seen it for the first time. Mr. Finer, just jump in.
I'm okay with the language. You're putting down exactly what it is you guys do. So to say, page 16, the city council is responsible for, I could argue that the Ohio Revised Code gives you other options, but if that's what you want to do, then it's okay.
Mr. Russell? I have one comment before the line accepted. Yeah, I think this is great, but from a fiscal perspective, and also noting that in the spreadsheets, the longer term projection is wonderful, but from a bond issuance perspective, when you're calculating your annual rate proposal, the rate proposal should be across each year to ensure that your projection sheet shows the proper balances and carry forwards into the future. So in other words, rather than just saying what the rate increase would be in the following calendar year or budget year, from a bond perspective, for me to argue and protect and maintain our bond rating, you would want to project rate increases across the entire set of years. So it would be 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, or 2, 3, 5, 2, so that your pro forma meets the criterion of your budget process.
And that is the expectation that the committee set for the administration for that Q3 review. If they were to recommend a rate change, they would be presenting us two sets of pro forma. One would show with no rate change, and the other one would show with rate change. And to me, what you said is a given. If you make the rate change in year one, obviously year 2, 3, 4, et cetera, should reflect the assumption of that rate change.
No, the additional rate changes beyond. So if it's, let's say it's 2% in 2026 this fall, and they propose 2%, but 2% does not change your carry forward estimate above the reserve to the proper number, then you should show the 27 rate increase as it would be expected at the moment in 28 and 29. In other words, this body legislatively should have in front of it the full set of increases across the entire time period, so that the bottom line of the projected pro forma meets the budgetary criterion that you have established for the next year. So in other words, you need to disappear these negatives.
So first of all, you can't be presumptuous that we're going to bring it on an annual basis for the committee to actually debate it. If I inflate those numbers or add percentages that aren't approved, then everything's fine. But if you actually look at the pro forma, it's showing the roadmap to where we're going to have to make a change between now, current time, and then. Then we will bring that recommendation to the Water and Sewer Committee to maintain the health and sustainability of it above the minimum reserves and everything. We will bring those comparing documents, actual to be proposed to this committee to actually debate that.
Again, I understand, but from a fiscal perspective and for a debt issuance perspective, it should be duly footnoted that those rate increases have not been accepted or approved by the committee for 27, 28, 29. Only the initial 26 increase was accepted. And it should balance out the performance across the entire year, the entire set of years.
There is no
you guys can-
proposed rate increase at this point, so.
But right now, what I'm saying is, if we get this, and you guys can do what you want, but I'm telling you, you're saying you want that in 2029 or 2028. That's what this says, 2029. So we'll be issuing that debt in 2028. If we hand this pro forma, and they're going to want it, we hand this pro forma to the people who we're working with to issue our debt, it's going to show that the pro forma doesn't work 5 to 10 years out. And it's also going to show that you guys aren't discussing how you fix it, where if you show a simple rate increase across those years, footnoted, that it may or may not happen, we may have other ways of doing this, then when I'm out going for your debt, I'm going to get you a better rate, and I'm going to have an easier time with the rating agencies explaining that the legislative authority, the Water and Sewer Committee, as well as council as a whole, has been proposed and discussed and understands these future increases are coming and they're planning for them today. That's the difference between current budget year and forecasting that you need. You need to do the forecasting. We're going to ask for it anyways when we're proposing to sell debt.
So layman terms, you want it to balance
I want it to balance all the way through.
And from-
with a proposed rate, or
A proposed but not
possible
adopted.
rate,
Yes.
a possible rate.
That you guys know this is coming.
Okay.
Mr. Ballman,
I'm good.
I think from a process standpoint, the contents of the pro forma can be debated. I know that I have questions on what was handed out here. There's some things in here, but these pro formas aren't designed, Jim, to be a pro forma that goes for to a bonding agency or rating agency to explain what our revenue stream is if we were to go into the debt market. Point is well taken. I actually kind of see the pro formas to continue to develop as time goes on, and as spreadsheets seem to always do. They get more complicated until you can't change them and start over again. But to the committee, once again, are we comfortable with the language in here for?
I think we kind of got ahead of ourselves. We were talking about the process.
We're talking about the process.
Right,
yes.
okay, and I'm good with the wording, and I think it's clear, it's understandable, so I'm good with the process and the wording.
Yeah, and my suggestion, Mr. Russell, was that the language reflects that the proposed rate increase will include the minimal necessary forward-looking rate increases to make sure that the performa balances. I wasn't discussing the performa itself, but the language.
Oh, in here.
Yes, you should say it in there. You should say, we are going to look at what those future increases are going to be. You need to say that to maintain.
Okay, so where would we say that, Jim?
It would just be an adder. I would think it would just be an adder to the one where we say you're going to bring you the rate change recommendation.
Which page are you looking at?
12, isn't it?
You're going to
16, 17. Yeah,
You're on 12.
12 or 16, 17, so water and sewer.
Okay.
So if a rate change, I would put just change to changes are recommended. In other words, if you're going to change the rate,
I'm sorry.
right here. Right there. Paragraph 3 in yellow.
Okay, paragraph 3. Yeah, paragraph 3, okay.
If the rate change for current year and changes for future years are recommended, and then you can adapt that language any way you want. But you just want it to be known that you're forward looking beyond 1 year as a legislator. They're saying they're going to issue that in 2028.
Now.
So what I'm saying is, you need to be proactive. We haven't issued that in years, yet not the.
I don't like group words. But that's kind of.
And Jim, that,
I think the document stand as is, reflects it. One council cannot, one council can't tell another council,
What it has to do.
actually, that would be an interesting question for the law director. Can a council this year say, we're gonna do 5 years of X% of rate increase or decrease in one of the utilities, even though that council will no longer be sitting, through that.
A new council could always undo a lot of things, just like the president can in the United States, do a lot of things.
Or would you say you're gonna do 2% per year for the next 5 years, or would you each year? See, I would see, to Jim's point, you show it on a document, but each year that still requires a vote of council. You go through that. You might say, we recommend for the next 5 years, we do 2% a year for 5 years. But every year of that 5 years, you're going through this process. And in Q3, you're coming and saying, we recommend we stick with the 2%, and here it is. And water and sewer makes their recommendation, council makes their voice heard in a vote. People know where folks stand, and you go from there. In which case, but then, going forward, when it comes to create, it'll be the expectation of the committee that, as Jim said, to Jim's point, that you can't, that what are we going to do in year X so that we don't have this negative number? And then you just somehow incorporate that into the spreadsheet and say that. So, yeah.
If I may,
Yeah,
to recall the process that we went through when we actually made the change, there were 2 or 3 different scenarios that we said,
Yeah.
that we presented. One was, let's do it now.
Nope.
Let's make the big change and then we'll reevaluate, which is what the agreement was.
Yes.
Or let's have a perpetual, like a lot of municipalities in the state of Ohio do. On average, if you recall, the municipalities across the state, according to the EPA, increase on average 3% every year their water rates. And we made the decision, the discussion was there, let's make the big change, let's reevaluate when things settle, we get the master plan into place, et cetera, et cetera. So we brought scenarios to this point. So this language should not change that. It's the administration's point to do that.
Josh and there's Randy. Josh, I can't see it, so if you're nodding, you have to nod out loud. To the committee, speak. This is a committee decision. So tell me what you're thinking.
No, Jim's got a great point there. If we show this, we can't show this to someone we're trying to get bonds from or have a rating.
But we're talking specifically the
Right.
language in
The language, I
in
think the
document.
language in here is, I think it's pretty good. As long as we have the ability to show future changes on the one sheet,
Yeah.
and then
Well, I think we can ask in these documents for whatever we want.
yeah, otherwise I feel good.
Randy, I'm
okay with the language, yeah.
And then other changes to the sewer document that you want to run us through.
Most of them are clerical. There were some ORC sections that were miscited, and when we started combing this, that we realized they were incorrect. So we changed some other language, like using wastewater instead of water, where it made sense. So again, minor things. It doesn't change the intent of the rules. For instance, it had city public health department, and it's actually Hancock Public Health. So language like that was just cleaned up based on the history of this and the revision. So we've confirmed that the ORC numbers that are in here are accurate, and they've been vetted by both water and wastewater superintendents to make sure that they are accurate. So those are essentially the details.
Questions for the administration on the other changes?
I have nothing.
So I'm writing our recommendation, our motion. I think I'll make it. We recommend adoption of updated water rules and sewer rules, including the new processes, including the which will include the new processes for instituting rate changes.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second on the table. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It is adopted. Mr. Palmer. Joining in. So lastly, next, I asked, when we made the water rate changes, we had some graphs and diagrams or presentations about what the effects we expected that to have on water revenue. So I asked Rob a very simple question. Did the water rate changes have the effects that we expected in revenue? And then can you show that to us? And the result of that, and then once he said yes to that, and I felt like I had him a little bit on the hook, I said, hey, how about sewer and stormwater too? And he said, you're my favorite. And now we're here. So, and so from that, and now we're here, and that's what these are about, and letter.
Two things here. Jeremy, you want to talk about the binder quick?
Yeah, so the pro formas, what I gave to you guys is pretty much an update to include 24's actual numbers. And then 25's what was proposed pretty much through the operating budget, and then also what was proposed through capital. So I made those changes for Q1 for 2025. So you have the actual numbers 25 and then or 24, and then the proposed numbers for 25. So that way you can kind of see what that looks like.
We each got a third quarter 24 and a first quarter 25.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me what the?
Yeah, so the third quarter 24 is the one you guys seen in September
Okay.
18. And then why I gave you guys kind of books and why I'm kind of keeping them together is I want to kind of keep this as a living document where when we have updates, we can keep these in here, and that way you can kind of track. That's how I do it. I'm tracking myself through that.
Okay.
You guys don't have to, but I wanted to provide it that way. So I wanted to give you what you've seen last year, and then an update of that has what we had for 24. In the third quarter of 24 was kind of projection numbers, but now for Q1 of 25 has the closeout numbers of 24 and now the proposed numbers for 25.
Right.
So he prepared this binder for you guys and we'll keep updating. And it actually has all three funds broke out in it in the same way he described it. Again, that's great because it's actual versus proposed, and you see the cadence from current out as we just discussed briefly. Something that Jason and his team and I've been working on is like, we need that monthly snapshot on how the cadence of things are, not only current, but compared to what the proposed change was that we discussed. So the last document that I just passed around, Jason and his team, we've been refining this since about the change in the actual rate. And it actually includes a lot of billing cycle information when it comes to what they measure and the quantities and so forth of what's done. The most important thing, or if you flip through it, it's a lot of data. But if you get to the last few pages, it actually breaks out rolling 12s comparative to 23 versus 24 of not only the water build, sewer build, and storm build. And then, and it's in a table format, so you can see the comparative and the difference year over year. And then the last 3 pages, last 3 pages break out in graph form, if you're more of a picture individual, the cadence of previous year revenue compared to expense to revenue as a cadence over the year. So you can kind of see that comparison. And because these are comprehensive funds and people don't realize that, why are these huge spikes in here? Well, it's operating and capital in one fund. It's not like general broke out with capital. So these are comprehensive for each specific fund, and you can see the cadence of the year, and you can see the comparative, how the actual increase did work, and you also see the cadence of the storm as well as the sanitary. So this is something that we've been working on and refining. Obviously, welcome to input and recommendations because other people look at things differently. However, this is something that we look at and he presents to the mayor, myself, and Jeremy on a monthly basis. The question that we've had, and we haven't gotten to the point we spin around on this, should this be included in the quarterly KPIs that are presented to council as an update?
Yes.
Okay. So, well, that was a question that was easily answered. And that's something that we were proposing, but wanted to let you share it with you, get any feedback. And we will present this into the KPI quarterly update to council moving forward.
So I have seen this document before. I don't know if the rest of the committee has. But it's not necessary for us to only give feedback to Rob and Jason on this in a meeting. You can also do so via email. And if they have issues that they think need discussion by this committee, they'll get in touch with me and we could schedule a meeting to discuss. And I appreciate the inclusion to this, but I want to go back to this.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
Mhm.
In Q3, I'm expecting you're going to give me another page. That
Correct.
you're going to put in here.
Correct.
And this is going to be the start of it. The
Correct.
start of that discussion.
Yeah.
So my first question is what is the inflation? What is the inflation assumption in this document? And can it be displayed? Can that inflation adjustment be displayed? Assumption. And
Yeah.
if we do not have an inflation adjustment in it, it needs one.
Yeah, so in our operating budget, we do have that inflated in there, and the rate that we have that is kind of going off historicals of how we project, and, how we have progressed through there. Now, a lot of that has to do with union contracts and stuff like that.
I don't
So
care how you
it's
do
tough
it.
on
I
that,
just
but we
wanna
do
see
have
it.
that. Yeah, Yeah.
To me, that I want to, this is me talking.
I agree with you.
And the rest of the committee, but I want to know, I'm looking at these, I'm looking at, for example, the water treatment operating costs and, I just, in an inflationary environment, what is, those numbers don't go up to, at the, those numbers seem a little flat to me.
it's so.
Just not on first blush, but I have,
Right. So we looked at that and we actually looked at it a couple times on why we use this, because we started out using a 3%. And that, it drove the numbers up quite a bit. And once we got to 2034, not saying they're wrong, but then that's when we were starting to look at it and be like, we got to look at historicals too and see what their actual trend is. Because they got a large enough budget within there that 3%, adding 3% to a $10 million budget already throws it up quite a bit. So we looked at historicals. I think it was a 1% pretty much that was going through there. Now we have some fluctuation years because if you look in 25, then 26 it goes up, but then 27 goes back down. 26 goes up because we have riprap that is needed going in the reservoir. So that's a $600,000 item roughly that's going to be in just for that year. Okay, so it goes back down the following year.
And that'll come through, and that's coming through the capital.
This
Long-term
all
capital.
ties back to the long-term
Yeah.
10-year capital
Yeah.
plan.
So looking at
And
the
that I
historical,
understand
that's where
that
we
we
got
would
that.
We would have, but I would think general operating costs you would incorporate our, you would incorporate our wage.
No, we didn't.
1%.
2.5%.
You would incorporate our wage, our current wage contracts,
Correct.
and then there would be an inflation assumption.
But isn't inflation different for, chemicals versus labor?
That's why you use an average. I mean, and for 2012 through 20, it was relatively flat, probably a 1 to 2% inflation. And then COVID happens and we start printing money like fools, and all of a sudden, I don't know what it was in 2021, 22, but it was well north of 5.
Chemical bid process, you do the bid and actually you could almost auto renew the next couple of years as you went through the minutia of it. They weren't even willing, they were actually not wanting to even commit to a whole year.
Right.
Because of the inflation. I mean, we were adding 40+% to some of these essential chemicals.
Right.
Which were just blowing up our operating costs. They're necessary. We couldn't do without them. So to Grant's point, the cadence was pretty flat with incremental increases. We had this huge increase and we're like, now it didn't go back down, it flattened.
Yeah.
So we're still so close to what that was. We're not sure what the future market's gonna look like, but we hope it's not gonna be 40% continuing to climb. But to your point, we're making those adjustments based on historicals, trying to eliminate some of those big spikes that we've had and then make that assumption moving forward.
Jeremy, it's a minor thing, but I need it for what we do. I need you to change it where you say stormwater fund to say stormwater restricted account. We do need that.
I
Yeah, and it's not a big deal.
I had restricted, but I didn't like because it looked too long, so I took it out of there.
Yeah, but we need it for what we do.
Can I put in parentheses underneath so my OCD doesn't kick
It's
up?
not a fund, so by state definition, it's not a fund. So you really need to call it a restricted account.
I can do that.
Thanks.
So, committee, other things on this that because I can start getting into the minutia of things that I wanted to see. And I think I'll just do that offline.
But
Yeah.
I agree.
But the one other big one I wanted to ask to the committee, and then Dave and Jason, there's a jumping point for you on this, is like, I work in percentages. The raw numbers don't mean anything, or mean something to me, but the percentages, like what percentage of our revenue is our expenses? And but I don't know what Dave and Jason, when you look at the operations of you guys and you do a peer review versus other folks, what are there metrics that is common for water, common for sewer, that is a criteria that we should, I would think that at some point for the financial metrics, we should be able to look at this and kind of see them without having for me to get out the Casio and start pumping in numbers and stuff. And I'm because if that's the way you operate, if you operate on some of these metrics, I think it behooves the water and sewer committee to understand those metrics and then be able to, as we see that. And I might be mixing stuff here, and if I am, tell me. But part of that to me is it gets into because of the different sizes, then you have to be in the percentages. We spend X percent of our revenue on capital, or whatever. So this is interactive. Just
Yeah, so kind of what you were saying, what we were just talking, if you look down at the bottom where it says water fund expense combined, would you underneath there, it's got total operating expense, we could show a percentage of what the expense to revenue is, and then underneath that is the capital, and we could show capital to revenue or capital to expense. But we could show those items, throughout there. I don't think that's hard to do.
That would be helpful.
Could we, I mean, we have some space here. I mean, when I hear you speak, Grant, I kind of picture in my head kind of that pie chart we get with our capital plan, So could that be something appropriate to show exactly what you would like in terms of percentages?
We tried to make this more user-friendly,
Compact, yeah.
I mean, make it fit the page, so to speak, but we do live in the world of percentages. It's just what and where. I mean, I like to actually have a comparison, not only to his point across the rows as you're working down the minutia of the year. I like to have percentage variances side by side to see the year-over-year percentage breakdown. Those are value add to me when I look at it. So as the group, without making this a huge spreadsheet, if you guys come up with some things in percentages of what creates value for this group, no problem.
There might be two different views of the same spreadsheet. One that has the minutiae percentages and stuff, and then the summary view like this. And I'm deferring. This is one guy on our committee of 5 opinion, and so.
And again, I'll say one more thing. Maybe we add some more index content down here, like, hey, the assumption year over year that's a 2% or a 1% inflation rate, or, we have to remind ourselves that the capital is actually refer to that.
I don't want the cat. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
because those numbers I can't emphasize enough. The numbers here tie back to another spreadsheet for capital, and they all tie together. It's impressive. But what do we need here to make it value add to you, for you?
For me, for simplicity, I just think a percentage column beside of it. I mean, that would work for me personally.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I like the idea of the pie charts too, but then it gets to be
Yeah.
Maybe certain,
you know,
Yeah,
if
let
you
me
just
play
have that
around with that
percentage,
a little bit.
down, there might be a couple percentages as you work down the year, but also comparison.
And then what you mentioned there, Rob, was about having the expected inflation or whatever you're assuming the inflation
Some
rate
of the
was.
assumptions down.
Yeah, have a list of
you know,
assumptions
a line
there.
item at the bottom.
Yeah, footnote or whatever, yeah.
Based on what you just said and and I would be good with what Randy is proposing.
Got it.
Percentage column.
It'll evolve, right?
Yeah.
We'll get it, we won't like it.
So in layman's terms,
Perfect.
put my comments that I have on the cell
One certain.
into a cell. Because I have all those comments, so that way I can look back over on stuff, so I can easily, I already have most of those numbers, I can just add them to Excel then.
That's the thing, you're not seeing the master, that there's a lot of stuff that's behind this printed version.
Yeah, I understood.
I do have one question on the spreadsheet though.
Mhm.
If you go to, year 2029, what's going on with?
We in water?
I'm on water, yes, sir. What's going on? It looks like we're taking a big loan now.
So that's what I was gonna say during that. That was, when we had discussion before, that's not set in stone, but I was looking back at kind of what, our normal, because at the end of 28, we're gonna be debt free. In that time zone, our plan is, our last major renovation was in 1986. And I got those listed at the bottom. But anyways, we know we're going to have to take out some kind of large kind of debt. Is it 500,000? I don't know. I just kind of threw some numbers in there because if you look back at historicals again, it's kind of roughly in that time with that. But that's what I was, when Jim was talking, I was going to say, that's not assumed. Yes, we said in 29 we're taking out 500,000. I just threw that in there because we were debt free. Now that could move up to next year. I'm not sure. A lot of that's going to come from the
That
capital
500
plan.
is the payment on the note, or that is the total?
That would be on the note, but if you combine all of the debt services that we have, that's not just saying one project.
Alright.
If you look at all those debt services that we had in the past couple of years, it was between the $600,000 to $300,000 range. So when we had all those, that 500,000 is kind of multiple projects all in one.
So if essentially,
So time out, Jim. So my question is, okay, so the payment is 500 grand a year.
Correct.
What is it 100 million we're borrowing? What is the number? Where's that number?
What's the total debt?
Yeah, we actually got a number, when we worked through, Andrew provided that kind of on that, so that's
Okay.
why another.
What does that
use
number look like? Is it 100 million, 50 or 10?
I can't
I
remember
don't
off my
remember.
top of my head, but I can include a note on that.
15 million per million gallons per day. That's the current.
No, he's saying that if a 500.
No, I'm saying, so if we do 6 million, 15 times 6, it's 30, 60, 90
90 million for what?
for like if you're replacing.
Oh,
that wasn't my question.
Well, that's
No,
not the question.
the
yeah, so-
500,000 is more just a placeholder, knowing that we're going to have, based on, we can get that number.
Okay.
Because
So my
Andrew had
question
a
is, what is-
formula.
how much money, how much capital is 500 grand a year? What does that get me? Is it-
We'll get that, I'll get that in the note.
Okay, so let's get it close. It can't even.
Not even what it's gonna be.
Not even like a range.
Well, what would it be today?
50 and 75 million or something.
Today, you're looking at probably, market 6 to 7%.
6 to 7%.
So what does, if you back amortize that backwards, that pay 7%, that would tell you.
Just get a range, just some.
Google, just put, what's 7% interest, how much is a $500,000 payment a year buying?
I can include
Okay.
a note or something.
Well, that's an important
Kind
piece
of,
that's
again,
missing.
the assumptions that I have on my spreadsheet, just, I don't have.
Yeah, alright.
Clogged up on here.
And again, that's the other thing about this, if you remember the original conversation that we had was that we need the master plan to actually have accurate
Yes.
information on what our roadmap is moving forward.
I would assume once that comes in as along with the long-term control plan, you're gonna see drastic changes in these documents.
Correct. Correct.
But I would wonder on here, how would you show the bond revenue in here? Because you show the expense, but you're not showing that bond revenue is going to pay for anything unless the assumption is it's buying a new plant.
Yeah, there's no capital corresponding to the expense, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much buying us projects that we can't afford right now. I mean, that's
But
going to come from the master plan.
But are the
Yeah.
projects on here? Because if the projects are on here and the revenue isn't,
To take the debt.
Right, but then all this ties back to, the capital plan, which then the capital plan has the master plan that's gonna be included with it, which we know there's gonna be major projects coming from the master plan, so same way with the sewer, if we talk about long-term control plan, I don't know how much or where or what projects we're doing right now, but I'm setting money aside, so I kind of know that, but this is, the 3.17 that I have on 2029. That's kind of capital that we know with equipment, with water line replacements and stuff like that, that we have to continue to do no matter if the master plan's there or not.
correct.
So that 500,000 on top of that is going to be for master plan projects that we don't know what the projects are, we don't know what the costs are. Those have not been identified yet, but we know we have a master plan coming that's going to be identifying these projects.
And then your operating revenue has got to cover both.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why I wanted to show the 500 and the capital that we know of.
The way you guys are doing this is good for me because it gives me a chance to plan out, go to the market, and when, and if there's an opportunity to do it sooner rather than later, for example, right now, it's not a favorable market, but if in a year and a half or 2 years, the market is very favorable, like it was 5 years ago, then what we do is we say, hey, let's borrow on these interim capital projects and we'll get that money cheap and hold cash for other projects.
From the committee, other questions on form. And to also ask other questions on format, other than if you have specific input that is of more minutia or I don't like the color blue, you'll make those comments specifically just to, Rob and Jeremy.
Okay.
Do we want to go through each fund and just ask questions about the numbers that are on the sheet? Is that a desire, or do you want to consume it first? And is there anything you guys?
Well, let's
Go.
go to the sewer for just a second. So is there like another big borrow here, like, where we're gonna take out a loan to rebuild?
No, see, I don't show anything on that because like, in the capital plan, I had $42 million set aside in the next 10 years for the long-term control plan.
Okay,
Again, don't know the amount, don't know anything like that, but we can keep that fund kind of afloat, if you want to
Okay.
say, on that. So that's why the assumption was made on the water. Now, it could come back at 60 million, and yeah, we're gonna be talking about debt service.
all right, so then I'm good with the sewer then. And then the last one is the stormwater. Is there any, we borrowing money here?
No, same thing, but you know, if you look at the bottom, this is kind of where we've said before that, on the horizon, storm is going to be something we're gonna have to talk about with rates. The biggest thing with this is, you know, one project's $500,000 to $1 million to do a storm line. So we're doing minimal amount right now on a lot of stuff. You know, we just put one system in. Down in Washington, we got $300,000 in grant funds for that. Use 300, but you know, I can't always count on that, and I like to use it on other stuff as well. So if we want to keep expanding storm and stuff like that, it's, you know, that project in the capital is going to keep going up.
What's most important is that creatively, they're telling you that that's coming. I have opportunity to shop the best markets, so sometimes markets, sometimes it's the PA, sometimes it's the actual work. That's what we have to be prepared to do, and then I don't want to do, especially the money.
All right, so
You know,
how
Jim, I
separate-
think that, I would think to that point, Jim, seeing this, if you said, gosh, the conditions are great, now, we don't need it for 2 years, but the conditions are just so
Yeah,
good.
let's get it.
Go get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we tried to do 5-7 years ago. We didn't have the capital laid out, we didn't have the projects, and we couldn't do it.
I think you've got so much variables that we don't know right now with the long-term control plan and the master plan. I mean, we just don't know.
Right.
I mean, what's gonna pop up there? I mean, we could be saving too much money, which is a good thing, or, you know, we could not even be close to it.
Right.
You really can't make those concrete decisions until we know what they're gonna require.
how separate is wastewater and stormwater? Are they absolutely completely separate? They're-
It's defined, EPA came down to define it. I don't want to get into Dave and Jason's areas, but from a financial perspective, for some reason, when this came out, and they first started separating storm, we were mandated by the state auditor's office to make it a restricted account, a separate fund. My preference would be that it would be a separate fund, but the restrictions are there, just like any other restricted account. The use is defined, and council cannot do it.
Okay,
If
so-
water goes in the storm, it's restricted. When money
So, okay,
goes-
but if we have combined sewers and we're trying to separate them, this account doesn't have any money, this account does have money. It's, I mean, can we,
We're-
you know, can we use?
Yeah, you can use
Take out
both, but there's some formulaic application. you have to do. But yeah, we just work with.
Yeah, we've done that.
Yeah, I've never seen that legislation.
We've done it.
But if it's a combined, you kind of separate it.
You can do a portion of it
Justification.
both ways.
Yeah.
It's kind of lean heavy this way.
Depends,
All
depends.
depends, yeah.
All right,
Send Ginger on vacation.
all right.
Questions from the committee to Rob on the contents of the performance. So I told Rob I had one last question. We made the water rate change per the recommendation. So now with hindsight, did we make it for the right amount? Did you get the revenues that was your expectation? And does it give you did it give the water fund the economic boost and additional time that was the expectation so far? I mean, from what you could tell.
I just say yes and okay. No, so the answer, the short version of that is yes. So when we did, we calculated this down and we broke it down for base rate as well, which is your diameter size as well as your usage and so forth. And based on what we saw coming down the pipe with our expenses, our increases in operating expenses as well as our capital needs, knowing we needed a master plan, we knew that this fund was not solvent over a long period of time. But we ran those projections based on the current rate that before we made the change. Then we ran the forecast based on different assumptions and different rate change scenarios. When we made the decision based on the conversation with the Water and Sewer Committee, the best scenario was to go with what we did, and we showed what the numbers were going to be based on those changes. And we have been spot on with what the revenues have been based on what we projected them to be with that. Now we actually, and you might jump in here, but I mean, just to the point, the reason we had to wait a bit to actually get the master plan even out to bid and actually pay for it is because it's $1 million project. And we didn't have that $1 million when you talk about operating expenses and everything else, chemicals that fall into this. We had to wait until almost the fourth quarter of 2024 to gain enough funding to maintain the whole system to go then bid out that master plan to make sure that we could pay for it, knowing what we were going to be. So again, it's all fallen in line. The dominoes are falling where they're supposed to be. And that was, I mean, with these guys, with what they present, with the numbers, to Jeremy and I, and his capability to actually put it into a modeling, I mean, we are exactly where we thought we were going to be.
Did we see a consumption decline because of the increased cost, or is the driver still pretty much, if it's raining, so I don't have to water my lawn?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't see a consumption change in point at all.
Okay. Questions from the committee?
Could we get an update on the master plan? Okay.
Should be seeing proposals from Arcadis anytime. So as soon as we get that, then we're open at the next council meeting to have an appropriation go through for that.
And long-term control plan is progressing?
Yep. They just, we got comments back from the EPA a couple weeks ago. So we're reading through the comments, and then, yeah, we're still progressing, still moving forward. Minimal comments, easy comments.
So is that, so they get a first draft and weigh in? Is that the type of comments?
No, so they review our models, and then they comment on our models. Once they okay our models, then we can go into the drafting of the plan.
Okay.
So I'd say June, we'll see our first draft of the plan.
And that was, the models were the problems the last time.
Correct.
Did we decide to take legal action against the previous company?
We did not, because the way the contract was, and this was before my time, I kind of came in mid-swing of this, but what they delivered was a plan. Now, how elaborate it was or how specific it was, I think that would have been lost in the legal language at the time.
Okay.
So based on current conditions, on what we had, what they provided, the legal opinion at that point was move forward. And that's what we did. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's.
And our water plant fix is holding.
Yeah,
Do we have other fittings that are similar that are now?
no, on the suction well side, we're good. Everything's now stainless steel.
Okay.
So now it's just other little wear and tear pieces and parts.
As this was a presentation of documents, I'm not sure that there's a recommendation to council. I would ask that you email Denise the,
PDF copies.
a PDF copy of the, really of just the 2025 one. The other one was there, and I'll mention to her that that should be part of our documents.
Yeah.
And I think with that, we have no other business. I'll look at the magic Snoopy watch and call it at 6:05. We are adjourned. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.